The idea of resurrection seems to be a sort of human fascination surrounding our mortality, our sense of what comes at the end. Is that reversible?
When I hear the word resurrection, I think of mammoths and dodos and thylacines. I want to see these species come back.
I would bring back the northern white rhino, definitely.
My dream, we need to have in Siberia 100 million big animals.
I think anyone working on de-extinction projects these days needs to keep a focus on what they're trying to bring back. Is it going to be fair to that animal to bring it back into the world that we're in now?
At the end of the day, we are taking dead and extinct genes and lost biodiversity, which is so critical for the future, and bringing that back.
If the question is de-extinction hubris or hope? I think the only honest answer is yes. It's a little bit of both.
Hello. Hey boys, I'm measuring passenger pigeons at Harvard right now on film. What do they look like? What are they colored like? Yeah, well, the boy pigeons have the peach-colored chest, and the females, they're kind of, grayish. You've seen the pictures of them in my office. No, I have not brought them back to life, yes. That would be really something. I've got identical twin boys. When I told my sons what I was going to do for work, bringing back passenger pigeons, my son Victor got exceptionally excited. Thought this is the coolest thing ever. He wants to bring back more species when he grows up. And when he learned I was going to be on TV, that got him more excited. So he wanted to make this painting, and he made me get a picture of a passenger pigeon. And yes, this is the living passenger pigeon for him. A dad passenger pigeon here feeding the baby a worm. They probably did not feed them worms, but this is how he sees birds. We've got some silhouettes of the birds flying in the sky overhead. But yes, he's very excited about the work. And I really love that he decided to give me this beautiful painting. So, means a lot.
Birds in the treetops singing out to me, and I can hear them endlessly calling, arising and falling. I can hear them.
From a very young age, as early as when I was 3 years old, I wanted to dig up dinosaur bones. And then as I got older, I really got infatuated with wildlife and conservation. And when I was about 13, turning 14 years old, there were articles in the news about thylacine DNA and sequencing DNA from extinct species. There were articles about the human genome being sequenced and genetic engineering in mice. And there was just all these things that really inspired me to think, okay, well, biotech might be able to get us to the point of recreating extinct species. Now, my first idea was the dodo bird. I did a science fair project when I was in 8th grade about whether or not we could clone the dodo bird. Little did I know back then that you cannot clone a bird. I also learned that the dodo was a pigeon, and which really got me inside. My grandfather had pigeons, and I'd been around pigeons, and I was kind of falling in love with pigeons to begin with, and learning that the dodo bird was a pigeon just cemented it. I was like, I love pigeons, they're awesome. And then I opened up a book, and there was the most beautiful pigeon in the entire world and all of history to me, a picture of a passenger pigeon, and I just fell in love.
Understood their meaning.
When I really read about these pigeons, every account talked about billions of birds in the sky, so many birds flying overhead that it was like an eclipse. Mark Catesby described in some places where they roost, which they do on one another's backs, they often break down the limbs of oaks with their weight and leave their dung some inches thick under the trees they roost on. They were so loud, you couldn't hear yourself even think.
They were 3 to 5 billion, and then they were diminished to 0. Anyone who reads it is going to be saddened tremendously. How could mankind have slaughtered them?
And on trying to see it again, the eye searches in vain. The bird is gone.
When you read about the history of passenger pigeons on the landscape, and you think about the role that they played, whether it was as like a force of disturbance or spreading mast or supporting different tree species, I think there's a real allure to that idea that maybe that could happen once again.
And how I wish I understood their meaning. Understood their meaning.
Though you have made me see troubles, many and bitter, you will restore my life again. From the depths of the earth, you will raise me up. In this part of the world, in Asia, and particularly Singapore, when they lose a pet, the emotions are exactly the same as when they lose a family member. Very intense, very deep, and the grieving sometimes can be for years. It's hard to rationalize because very often it's very sudden. We say we prepare for it, but we haven't. I'm Dr. Jean-Paul Lee. I'm a veterinarian, a graduate of University of Sydney 50 years ago, 5 decades, and I'm currently working in Singapore. Increase the respiration to 220. Adrenaline dilute now. Diaphragm now. Diaphragm quick. I need number 15. Hit and bounce. Harder. Well, most of my clients come to me because I am usually known as the doctor of last resort. I'm very frank with them. I tell them I don't work miracles. I don't have a cure. I don't have an answer. If you ask me, would you consider cloning humans? I would say straight away, very quickly, no. With dogs, would you consider cloning? Yes, because it's chalk and cheese. When you clone a dog, you know exactly what you're getting. But you need to ask yourself pure questions. Are my motives pure? What is it for? Is it just a whim? Am I trying to do an experiment? No, I'm not. It's very personal. Cloning is very, very personal. And you know, I would never clone another dog unless it's a dog like Khan. Khan was special. It's 1 in a million. Khan was a blue cattle dog. We had this instant bond. He transferred from a puppy, in my mind, to a pet, to my son. You know, that bond became so real. It was just absolutely uncanny because he could read what I was thinking, I swear. And he would, like, for example, I'm thinking, should go for a drive, you know. Next thing you know, he's sitting on the front door. I didn't say anything. One day, when he was 15 years old, I came home, and usually he's always standing at the gate there waiting for me. And usually he would move away. But that night, for some reason, he didn't move away fast enough. I wasn't driving fast. I was just going out my driveway in the garage, and I felt something on my left front wheel. And I thought, must have an obstruction there. There was something on the ground. And I accelerated to go over this obstruction. And my wife was standing in the door, and she screamed, and she says, "Khan!" And I realized I just ran over him. And I backed over him, because at that time my thought was, get off him. So I backed over him. And I ran out of the car, and there he was, lying on the ground lifeless, whimpering in pain. And I thought I killed him. So I brought him home in my arms because I didn't want him to leave at the hospital. And I'm a vet. I'll look after him. Brought all the stuff home. The injections, the drips, the pain meds, everything. I sat by him. And he had this forgiving look in his eyes, like, "Don't worry, Dad, you didn't purposely ran over me." But me, I was racked with guilt and remorse and full of fear because I'm going to lose my son, And I'm a very good vet. I should be able to help him. I keep thinking, what else can I do for him? So one night, when he just recovered from the seizure, I told him if he really wanted to go, he could go. And I will see him one day. And I promised him that I will make every effort to have him back with me. I did not make a decision straight away to clone Khan. We just preserved the cells in the case of cloning. But it took me nearly a year. I had to finish grieving. I had to make sure that I was going to clone Khan for the right reasons. And it was not till 8 months later, when I felt the time was right, I felt more comfortable, I wasn't having any more nightmares, then only then I decided to resurrect the cells and started the cloning process.
I think one of the reasons why we're so fascinated with the idea of resurrection is because we recognize that so much has been lost. We're currently in a mass extinction event, a 6th mass extinction, in which the rate of extinction itself is speeding up and increasing in this moment that we're living through. I think there's a sense of remorse even, in a sense that could we perhaps change the past? Could we somehow make amends? What brought them to the brink of extinction? And what were the factors that led to that state of affairs?
Wekea hii mama hapa. Hapo. Haya, sasa huko.
Usione mnaino. Come on, Najin. Darling. Mama, come here. Come, Mama. Come, Mama. Lovely girl. I'm one of the caregiver of the 2 northern white left in the old planets. That is Najin and Fatu. So Fatu and Najin together, the mother and the daughter. The first time I met Najin and Fatu is the time they arrived here from Czech Republic. And I was among the guys who welcomed them here. Fatu, come and say hi to Mama. Mama. When they came here, actually they are not understanding English. And we learn from the caregiver from Czech Republic how we can able to handle them. And we learn a little Czech language. So you spend the night well, na Mama. So even the day you spend very well, you wallowed at night. We are talking to them all the time and the way we are spending with them. Love the girl. So that's how they are so friendly with us. The third rhino is called Tagwa. Tagwa is the southern white rhino, and she was brought here to teach the northern white how to be like a wild animal. When they came here, they don't know even to fend by themselves. They don't know how to protect themselves from anything. Tagwa, he taught Najin how to graze, how to sharpen their horn, not to be nervous when they came along anything. What the Tagwa is doing, they copy to do that. That's how the Tagwa taught them to be like a wild animal.
Olpejeta Conservancy is a 90,000 acre piece of conservatory area in the northern part of Kenya. The safety of wildlife is an enormous challenge. Olpejeta has invested heavily in security, and specifically so to protect the northern white rhino. We have 24-hour surveillance on these 2 northern white rhino. Safety is both at the level of their security and also at health level, whereby we have veterinarians like myself who check on the status of health of these animals. Yeso jamaa vipi?
Sawa sana bwana daktari.
Kula chakula iko wapi? Hii rhino ile tukavuga. Ile tuvuruga.
Simama hapo.
Mama, stop. Stop, Mama.
Kuna.
You want to check your body, Mama.
The first time I met Najin and Fatu, it was a moment that I could describe as one of mixed feelings. Because then you're looking at a species that you cannot find anywhere else, and then imagining that this is going to be my job.
What?
I have to see Najin and Fatu at least 3 times a week. So I have also established some bonds with these 2 females. They will allow us to touch them occasionally when they're not very excited. The reason for bringing those animals into Kenya and into the wild setting was for them to breed naturally, because then they had been kept in a zoo for a long time and reproduction did not happen. So it was thought that if you bring the animals back to Africa, back into a natural setting, then you might stimulate the males and the females to have natural mating and and end up with offspring. But then that did not happen. And it was actually found out that Fatu has reproductive issues. She has pathology in her uterus. It's not possible for it to conceive. The most significant issue with Najin is her age and her limbs, and that rhino might not have the strength in her hind legs to carry that pregnancy. So then the notion that you could have those two females pregnant was ruled out. The northern white rhino should not just be a story in a museum. It should be a reality. We are rushing against time, so that then our desire is to have some of the natural behavior that the northern white rhino have passed on to the calf. But it's important for us to have a northern white rhino calf that will allow us to have them interact with the two females while they're still around.
中国的传统文化中呢，有很多关于因果、关于这个轮回、关于这个转世的一些哲学思想。我们做这个克隆，我觉得跟这个中国古老的这个哲学，我觉得也有很多相通之处。像我们的有一些客户，我们一些这个宠物的主人，认为宠物有可能从来就没有离开过它，只不过是换了另外一种存在的形式。然后我们也希望我们用技术能够去满足大家去失去这个陪伴的这个家人、陪伴的宠物带来的痛苦，我们能够去通过技术来去弥补。
你要说针对于啵啵这个事儿的话，在我心目中就有复活，肯定有死亡，但在我心目中他就没死亡，他只是换了一个载体。
我跟我们家先生是一样的，我觉得在我们心目当中，啵啵根本就没有死，他依然就是活着，只不过就是你看不到他而已。但是他的灵魂或者是他依然都在活着，只要是细胞这个一存储了，它肯定是100%的。就哪怕有一线希望，不到100%，只要有一线希望，我们都相信它一定是能回来的。
南京话，你看我啵啵的那个骨灰坛都在这儿放着呢。我出门开始的时候，我就每天都揣着怀里，甚至抑郁，甚至焦虑了都因为。所以说，不行，家人看我怕我出事儿，所以说，
而且走得特别突然，我们就是根本就没有想到他会能马上的离开，所以就是让我们特别的舍不了。
动物在我眼中啊，它就不是动物，家人，是吧？就是家人。 所以说有时候啊，喜怒哀乐有他们真是不一样。
抬头还行，那么抱。
哎呀，这是我们下班，这就是我的抱。妈妈回来了，想妈妈没有？
我现在的家人等于是包括他们有3只猫，1只狗，当然了，不算大奔，大奔回来就2只狗了，这是大福，还有多宝，这是西米，哎呀急了，这是我全部的家人，还有我的5只蝈蝈，以后不一定确定啊，暂时5只蝈蝈。
有一天，我们家先生跟我说，我在网上查到一家公司，然后他们可以克隆。我当时特别惊讶，我说啊，我说还可以克隆呢。他说那要不要把咱家大波，万一要是不成，咱得先保存一下这个细胞。我说行啊，我说没问题呀，我说可以呀，我说那咱们哪天开始啊？然后其实那几天呀，大波就已经有点不成了。那时候在医院，我说那就赶紧的吧。我说要不成的话，咱就赶紧联系。
我现在在网上搜了一下他们新诺国，哎呦，相关单位什么公安局啊，就是这个克隆这个军犬，咱们这公司还真不错，上门然后积极的，然后怎么提取啊那些的，赶紧的，这样我就心里踏实很多。我觉得那时候我做这个决定太明智了，要不后期的话很麻烦。
然后一直我们就提取完了之后，从那一刻就一直等着，真的等了1年的时间。
These are such beautiful photos, Holland. It's like it's alive.
It's the closest thing to living. I've always felt that way. You're looking at the live pigeon.
And we don't have photos of woolly mammoths or dodos. We don't have photos of dinosaurs, but we have photos of these beautiful birds. And everyone, they think, oh, it must be like a street pigeon. It's like, no, this is the sports model. Sleek chest and breast, cut wings. This is a bird built for speed, endurance, and maneuverability. A bird that could have flown 60 to 70 miles per hour.
Yeah, like lightning. And they are the most definitive, clear photographs of living passenger pigeons. I think there are 18 in total, 17. And I may not have them all, but I believe I do. And some of them are in miniature. Ben was saying when he saw that collection of paperwork I've collected since I was 15 or 14, he said, wow, I thought I was the only person that did that type of thing. Every scrap, anything I could find, and one by one, I photocopied every one of them, bound them, and read them assiduously. And I learned about the bird. It became part and parcel of my soul. And to this day, it still is. It's mystifying in my mind. It's the strangest phenomenon in my life.
One of the things that stuck out to me about the passenger pigeon story is how many people developed a fascination for this bird in childhood. So a lot of people I interviewed would talk to me about when they were a kid of going into the forest and thinking there has to be just one passenger pigeon left. Like, how could this be true that so many birds disappeared?
The record for the most shot in one shot actually goes to a priest. Killed 132 with one shot.
Probably isn't a punt gun, though.
No, he's just using a regular gun. A punt gun would have killed thousands for ducks, usually.
I hear you, right.
Killed hundreds and thousands
Fired
of ducks
into
that
the
way.
right flock.
You know, the birds were so abundant that they would kill a whole bunch of them, and they would only send the biggest, plumpest birds to market.
Netting was primarily the biggest factor.
Where is that?
They catch them wholesale.
There was one account of catching 3,000 in one net, because they made the nets a couple 100 feet long. For me, the worst method of killing them was when they would burn sulfur under the trees and poison all of the chicks and the adults, and they would fall out.
And they pick them up the next morning.
Yeah.
Because they do it at night when they're in the roost.
Yep. That extinction was the first undeniable extinction caused by human beings, where it was the idea that something in the billions could disappear, then natural resources are exhaustible. And it inspired the modern conservation movement to take action. And the reason that we've saved so many species since really owes to the extinction of this bird. And for me, that makes it almost exceptionally poetic.
With the engineering we have now in biology, wouldn't it be possible for us to perhaps read the genome of the non-existent bird and compare it? And so I wrote my article. I talked to a number of biologists at the time, and I can remember one saying, quote, "Oh yeah, good luck, maybe in 50 years. And I also remember responding to him saying, no, in about 15 to 20.
The truth is, we're not resurrecting the real passenger pigeon. We're not taking an individual that died and giving it life again. We can't even recreate the true original passenger pigeon. We have to take living bandtail pigeons and edit their genome and create really more of a hybrid animal that hopefully, if we do the job right, when you see it, you'll think, there's the passenger pigeon. It will look, act, and serve the ecological role.
I do wonder whether people have the capacity to tolerate a species like this, which from its description was massive in population and could have a very, very destructive effect on the landscape, as well as being voracious in its appetite. Would, you know, the Federal Aviation Authority want flocks of passenger pigeons, you know, near JFK Airport in New York City? Would farmers or large-scale agricultural operations be willing to put up with, you know, flocks of passenger pigeons descending and destroying crops? I think those are very, very real questions.
If I would come here 30,000 years ago, and I would look around from this hill, I would simultaneously see, I think, 2,000 to 3,000 animals. This would be mammoths, bison, horses, reindeer, wolves, lions, woolly rhinoceros.
This really productive ecosystem existed in the far north during the Ice Age, that it looked basically like the Serengeti in Africa.
Мамонтовая экосистема жила на севере миллионы лет и занимала громадную территорию. Она была и в Испании, и во Франции, и в Сибири, и на Аляске, и в Калифорнии жили мамонты. И на севере Китая. Эта экосистема могла существовать при любом климате.
As climate changed, this place became more favorable
for living of humans. And first humans entered the Arctic, and the further the humans went, the deadlier were the consequences.
So it was likely that people were hunting them. They were a major source of the end of the mammoths. And gradually, as they declined, these habitats lost that bit of diversity.
As soon as animals went extinct, the pastures, which were in combination with them, disappeared as well. I've been coming here, I think, what, for almost 35 years, I think, as long as I remember myself. And never in my life I saw even a single animal out here. So this is pretty much de facto the ecological desert. So it's an abandoned place. And the big problem that such territories are spanning for 1,000 kilometers in any direction. No animals, little life. Yeah. В трубочку завернула. Да, я поменял. Это же серьезная контора. Конечно, есть. Что, поехали? Сейчас посмотрим. Потому что я еду 5-4, у меня скорость 36. Я думаю, что-то не то. So we are now driving on the main stem of the Kolyma River, and probably 95% of people in Russia have no idea that Kolyma is a river, because that's the most common term for the Gulag name. So from prison camps from Stalin's time, which mostly were up the river, where the gold mining happened. But since that, Kolyma lost all of its prisons, and now it's just vastly empty place with literally no people living, very few people living here. So we are now going up to Pivani Yar, which is the world's largest inland permafrost exposure.
You leave the research station in a boat and you go for like 5 hours up the river. And the river is huge. There's times when you can't see the far bank of the river. And then you get to Pivani Yar, and it's a 40-foot tall permafrost cliff. And it's made up of layers of soil that built up over the ice age.
For me, Pivani Yar's garden, it's some encyclopedia of past life. There is storage of seeds of grasses, there is storage of bones, storage of microbes for which sleep till Pleistocene.
The main problem with permafrost, that is very fragile, and secondly, that it contains lots of ice. Where we are right now, I'm straight on the border between two ecosystems. And that's actually quite an important place to show, because right now, majority of all the modern ecosystems here in the Arctic look like that. That's a large forest, that's a Labrador tea, and you can barely see any animals living in this environment. So if someone will resurrect mammoths right now and will let it walk on these territories, the mammoths will be dead by New Year. Probably much earlier than that. Well, it will definitely be dead by New Year, because there is nothing to eat here. These ecosystems are super low productive. They don't give any profits. And these trees are not good even for lumber. And here, if you go, this is actually a great graveyard back in the Pleistocene time, it's called the mammoth steppe ecosystem. And this pretty much graveyard. It's still containing soils of this ecosystem. It contains remains of animals of this ecosystem. It contains also nitrogen, which was accumulated in this ecosystem. And if you release mammoths here, it will be reproducing very well. Yeah, that's a mammoth leg. Not in best conditions, but relatively big one. It's a part of the bone from the leg. I think about average size mammoth. Okay, I'm dirty and a bit stuck. Risky life of paleontologists. It looks a little bit like a piece of wood, but here you can see that it's a bone structure, pores in the bone.
We know that mammoths were present across the northern hemisphere for much of the last at least 2.5 million years. That's as long as the ice age, the last ice age, lasted. What this tells us is that mammoths were probably keystone species in many of the habitats across the northern hemisphere, everywhere that they lived. They clearly performed important ecological functions that are missing because of their extinction.
That's a disintegrated mammoth tusk. If that would be intact and of good quality, that would make not like a fortune, but quite a good money. This particular one doesn't cost anything probably. But for us as a scientists, even such things is actually quite crucially important. And moreover, even a tiny piece like that is of interest to us. I think we collected like 1,000 different types of bones. And this collection actually helped us to answer very important question. How rich was this mammoth steppe ecosystem back in time? Мы, соответственно, с дедушкой собрали вот эти все кости, делали анализ и восстановили, сколько у нас вообще животных раньше здесь жило.
А сколько лет этим костям?
Эти кости где-то, наверное, самые старые здесь им где-то 1050 лет, а самым молодым где-то, наверное, 15-20. Самые последние погибли 3300 лет назад, известно, это на острове Врангель, когда уже, так сказать, у нас пирамиды египетские стояли.
А это что?
Вот это вроде как таз. Да, вот тазовые кости. Since I was a small child, I remember the meal was going to the 1 year old. My parents, my father went there and always brought some bones, and we always had tons of different paleontological bones in our station. So I think it's kind of worth to show my youngest daughter some of these bones because it's just cool entertainment and just giving at least some sense of what parents are doing.
Sergei did some, what I think is really clever research where he walked the transect down the beach every fall. And then after doing a lot of statistics and analysis, he reconstructed the makeup of the animals that were in that ecosystem.
In the last decades of Pleistocene, it was 1 mammoth per square kilometer, 5 bison, 7 horses, 15 reindeers.
Zimov is a pathological optimist, and he just has this like mind-blowing self-confidence. If it existed then, I can bring it back.
Если нам удастся добиться такой же численности животных, как 50 тысяч лет назад, наш эксперимент прошел удачно. А мы уже в этом почти уверены.
There is no instruction how to create ecosystem, and no one done it before. And for us, we are not only trying to create ecosystem, we are also finding the most effective way to do that.
Z-mobs have been doing some work in the park, which is really impressive, where they've brought all these different animals into the park that used to be there, and they're asking questions about what the ecological consequences of having those animals are. And I can only imagine that having an engineer, that keystone animal on that ecosystem, like a mammoth, could completely change the way that that ecosystem is responding to the changes that are happening today.
The impact is so big if it works that you have to try. You have to like hope that it's going to work, and maybe it won't. And you try not to mess too much up in the process, but you also have to like try to make it work.
It's a blueprint for doing something rather than doing nothing because we're scared, because doing nothing is a decision that also has profound consequences for the future of our planet.
明天的场景啊，其实想了很久了，天天跟过电影似的想，明天是什么样，见着啵啵什么样的。
明天咱们就看到大哥哥了，是不是？我们去西诺谷。
我这对啵啵的感情很难形容。我爱人知道我，因为啵啵走了，我这性情大变，有点抑郁，有点焦虑。他特别了解我这个性格，就因为啵，所以说对啵啵回来，对我是种救赎，也是对我们的家庭是种救赎。到现在的话，反正心情还是很亢奋。哎呀，迫切，估计今晚上得失眠。
昨天晚上就已经失眠了。
啊，明天就能见着啵啵了，也特高兴，是吧？